I read a lot of articles from the trades every single day. I'm sure that surprises absolutely no one. And just like any other media source, if this was the only place that I went for my news, I'd be pretty intractable and woefully underinformed. Right now, more than ever, we seem to have many people lacking a basic understanding of media bias, and how very few players are actually involved in distributing information. Sometimes it's surprising to people to hear that about 80% of what they hear is from 5 different parent companies in this country. And that's insane. But they get even more surprised when it gets broken down into what institutions hold the majority of stake in those media companies. Sometimes they react appropriately and are quite alarmed. Now, revelations like that are dangerous to the players involved. Information is power. It's a phrase that not enough people take seriously. It's why the message is repeated so often, even if it lacks accurate information or is outright deceitful. Instinctively, you know when you are being misled when the story changes or the goalposts start to move. But if it's heard enough and often enough by enough people, it can get accepted by many of them. Another element is where you get your source information and data. If you want to craft a story one way, you just have to get your information from a source that gets you to your conclusion. There used to be ways to eliminate source bias, but now even peer-reviewed studies in certain areas are prone to their own biases. So the mechanisms to convey information are very important. Even a simple trade magazine, like obviously Deadline, Variety, and many others, they want to convey the right thing by going to the right source. So let's take a look at the framing and the source in a repeating narrative from all of the trades. Representation in filmmaking. Here we go. Chloe Zhao directed an impressive, yet quite dour film called Nomadland that was both critically acclaimed and, of course, award-winning, including an Oscar or 2. This created a new poster person for the representation in film crowd because of just how many boxes Chloe Zhao actually checked. She fit perfectly within the message. In fact, she fit to a T. This picture from this article here, along with the use of her name within it, are a form of framing. It's targeting a bias it wants the reader to share, or they're trying to cultivate within the reader. The title of the article itself, "The Number of Female Directors on Top Hollywood Films Declines in 2021, is also a form of framing. Let's quickly work through this article, and we'll look for some more. Hollywood made history in 2020, fielding a record number of films from female directors. But after achieving that milestone, the film business found itself regressing in 2021, with women comprising 17% of directors on the top 250 grossing movies, down from 18% the previous year. Interesting. The picture grows darker when the focus narrows to the top 100 most popular movies at the box office. Women comprised 12% of directors on those films, down from 16% in 2020. The research is the product of a report entitled The Celluloid Ceiling, which is produced annually by the Center of Study of Women in Television and Film at San Diego State University. It comes as female filmmakers like Jane Champion, Maggie Gyllenhaal have achieved both notable critical successes this year and are seen as awards contenders. It also is being released after several female filmmakers like Chloe Zhao for Eternals and Nia DaCosta's Candyman directed movies that topped box office charts when they were released. That's a questionable statement in and of itself. But researchers say those achievements remain the exception to the rule. There weren't a whole lot of films released this year, so I don't know. Martha Lausen, she's the executive director of the Center of Study Women in Television and Film, and the report's author, which, by the way, she's been doing for 24 years, says, while Chloe Zhao won the Oscar last year for directing Nomadland, and Jane Campion is frontrunner for this year's Race for the Power of the Dog, the percentage of women directing films actually declined in 2021. Basing our perceptions on how women are faring on the well-deserved fortunes of just a few high-profile women can lead us to inaccurate conclusions about the state of women's employment. Once again this year, more than 80% of films do not have a woman at the helm. There were some modest improvements in other areas. Women filled 25% of key roles behind the scenes, such as directors, writers, executive producers, editors, and cinematographers on the top 250 grossing films in 2021. That was an increase from 23% in 2020. If you drill down into each individual role, there were other signs. Women accounted for 26% of EPs. That was up from 21%, so a 4% increase. 32% of producers, which is an increase of 2%. 17% of writers on the most popular films were women, which is the same percentage as 2020, so no change there. And the same held true for female editors and cinematographers. They must have added a cinematographer or two to replace ones that are no longer with us. Of course, the study does not fully capture the current landscape of movies. Of course not. I could read on through this, but ultimately, let's just read the conclusion. Next year, all the major studios will have at least 2 films from female directors. That marks a first. But there has also been a stubborn lack of major progress since Lausen began releasing her study 24 years ago. Good gig if you can get it, right? Finally, taking the long view on progress, or rather lack of progress, on a few of these behind-the-scenes roles is truly mind-boggling, she wrote. For example, the percentage of women working as writers has increased only 4 percentage points from 13% in 1998 to 17% in 2021. The percentage of women working as editors has increased only 2 points from 1998 to 2021. The percentage of women working as cinematographers has only increased 2 percentage points from 4% in 98 to 6% in 2021. So it's all about these numbers. But here's the problem. The conclusion that the article would like you to draw, or they would hope that you would draw, is that women are underrepresented in filmmaking as a whole. Or you could also conclude that despite the drastic changes in requirements for filmmaking and all of the trumped up virtue signaling in Hollyweird, nothing has actually changed. I'm not sure they wanted you to draw that conclusion. The truth is that this article is written on a regular basis, both in Deadline, Variety, and other places. By the way, Deadline, Variety, they're owned by the same company. They always share the same tone. There doesn't seem to be much difference anytime this is written. It's going to be written annually at the very least, because this study is released annually, at least for the last 24 years. Not enough women in all filmmaking roles is, I guess, an interesting problem. In the course of a year, the forced diversity made changes in many key roles, including directors, executive producers, writers, editors, and even lucky cinematographers. At least the ones that weren't working on the Rust set. You also need to look at where the information came from, at least from this article. The state-funded Center for the Study of Women in Television and Film is at University of Southern California, San Diego. They produced this annual report, as I've mentioned. They've creatively named it, as in the article you saw, the celluloid ceiling. Keep in mind that the executive director, Martha Lausen, has been working this gig, as I keep mentioning, for 24 years. But there's many things, well, at least one thing that's painfully lacking in this article, and that's context. Nowhere in any of this article, nowhere, is a key question. Who is being left out that actually wants in on these key roles? Or how about any role in Hollywood? Because the conclusion they want you to draw is that women are being excluded from positions in Hollywood. Anyway, in none of these articles that I've ever seen do they cite information showing you that qualified women are being denied opportunities. All they're counting is the number of women. There's a lot of supposition. They're trying to lead to a conclusion without saying it. They do this in this particular article with the statement, once again this year, more than 80% of films do not have a woman at the helm. To me, talent in an industry, or in any field, leads to success. Let's take a look at the headline for the article again. Number of female directors on top Hollywood films declines in 2021. Are they saying that despite the increase in the percentage of female directors, which they point out in the article, the quality of filmmaking has been watered down? That doesn't sound good. Also, if you increase the total percentage of female directors, how did they actually make less films? Interesting question there. The article cites another statistic. Only 17% of writers on the most popular films were women. Does that not seem to be saying that's something they don't want to say? It should also be pointed out that in this particular article, the only place where the numeric representation is spelled out is in that statistic. That's kind of weird. Editorial oversight, I'm sure. And there's so many other questions that this kind of article or presentation of information can be questioned because they arrive or want you to arrive at specific conclusions. But if you think about it, there are some things they are kind of ignoring. Anyway, let's finally just wrap it up here and say, how many women actually want to work in these roles, at least in TV and film production? Do we know that? Not here. That actually has to be the question when it comes to this thing. How many people want to be in these jobs? Because some people don't want to work in Hollywood. Some people don't want to be garbage men. Some people don't want to, work at an aquarium. Some people don't want to be librarians. Anyway, what do you think? Do you think that this same tired data dump from the same source is giving you the same results every time? Do you think that's a little bit telling? Do you think that this points to some clear misogyny somehow? Do you think that this points to an intrinsic issue with Hollywood at the studio level? Of course, if you have any other thoughts in line with any of this, I would love to hear those, along with your insights into the framing of the message in pretty much every form of media, because believe me, it's there. And finally, in closing, I just want to say, please support other independent creators out there. They absolutely deserve your support. There are many of them that produce quality content on almost even a daily basis. They are absolutely not getting the same kind of support that the mainstream media sources do. So let's try to help them out. And I'll end the video the same way I always do by saying, please take care of yourself. Take care of others. Wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And until next time, bye.
Thanks for visiting today. Be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.